All right, welcome to TinkerzLab and RC Tech on TinkerzLab. I've been watching this plane for over a year, and when the price came down to $89.99, I went ahead and pulled the trigger on it. It's a nice sized plane. It's the Volantex Saber 920mm Wingspan. I'm going to give you guys some specs, some tips, and some modifications that I've performed on it so far. But if this turns out to be a good flying plane, less than $94 delivered to my door for this size of plane, it's plug and fly, I think is going to be an absolute steal. All right, so the specified CG location on this plane is 92 millimeters plus or minus 5 millimeters. There are molded CG circles on the bottom of the wing, so there's no guesswork on where the CG is located. I currently have mine at a neutral balance right in the center of the specified CG location. So we'll see how that works out. In the specifications, it lists the all-up weight of this plane at 1,100 grams. And the recommended LiPo is a 3S 1800 milliamp hour LiPo. They don't talk about the C rating or the weight or anything like that, just a 3S 1800 milliamp hour LiPo. Well, I've got a 1500 3S and I've got a 2200 3S. Now my 2200 was too thick to fit in the battery bay, but my 3S 1500 milliamp hour 35C LiPo fits in there nice and snug. I can position it so that I've got a neutral balance right there on their specified CG. If I need to move my CG a little further forward, I've got room to move my battery forward. So I think that battery is going to work out really well. And it weighs 125 grams is what it weighs. I'm using and so my all up weight with that LiPo that weighs 125 grams is only 558 grams. So I don't know where they got that 1,100 gram number from, but mine's about half of what they specified for the weight, so that's good. I'm using a RadioLink Byme-A Gyro in mine, and the receiver I'm using is the RadioLink R8FM SBUS PPM receiver. Here's the dimensions on my LiPo in case you guys are looking at this plane or you have one on the way or you want to pull the trigger on one. The LiPo I'm using is a Turnigy 3S 1500 milliamp hour 35C. The dimensions on that are 89 millimeters by 34 millimeters by 25 millimeters, and as I stated, it weighs 125 grams. I did do my best to measure the battery bay. The battery bay is 27 millimeters wide by 36 millimeters deep by 120 millimeters long. So there's a wide range of LiPos that you're going to be able to use for that. Now the 27 millimeter width number is at the narrowest part of the battery bay, so be aware of that. So yeah, and that's why mine fits fairly snug because I've got it pushed all the way back, and the width of mine is 25 millimeter with with Velcro on it. It's a snug fit in there. As you can see from the picture, I did replace the stock wheels on it. The stock wheels and the landing gear struts and axle are 2 millimeter steel. So the stock wheels have 2 millimeter hubs. They're only 32 millimeters in diameter, 11 millimeters wide, which is 1.26 inches in diameter by 0.43 inch wide. I wanted larger wheels on this plane to be able to roll fairly well out in the hard pack that I have to land on. So the wheels that I put on it, they're lightweight wheels, they're spoked wheels. They're 52 millimeters in diameter, 11 millimeters wide, so the same width as the stock wheels that came on it. And inches, the diameter is 2.05 inches by 0.43 inches. Okay, so as I stated, the wingspan of the plane is 920 millimeters. The length of the plane is 875 millimeters. The prop is a 90-50 two-blade prop. The motor states that it's 2215 1400 kV motor. Now, Volantex has a habit of cheating, in my opinion, on the diameter of their motors. I caught them on one of the Volantex planes I have stating that the motor was a 2808, I think is what they stated it was, but they actually measured the outside diameter of the bell housing to get that 28 number. It was actually a 2208, not a 2808. But on this motor, they actually measured the diameter of the stator rather than the outside of the bell. So it does appear to be an actual 2215 1400 kV motor. It comes with an easy plug 30 amp ESC. Those typically have a 5 volt 2 amp back in them. The servos are analog, I'm sure, otherwise they would have specified digital. So it's got 4 9-gram servos in it. It says assembly time less than a half an hour. I'd say it took me about an hour for the assembly because you've got to glue some components together. So anyway, let's take a look at some of the slides that I put together so I could show you this. The motor is already pre-installed. So let's bring up the next slide. Okay, so what I wanted you to see here was you see these foam blocks that are on the bottom of the wing, the main wing. And then if you look at the cutouts on the side of the fuselage. So the wing is only going to go in. You're only going to slide it in one direction. Because you're going to slide this into the fuselage, you need to make sure that you don't install your servo arms or your control horns until after you've installed your main wing. Otherwise, you won't be able to slide it in. I do like these blocks and these cutouts because it enables you. There are basically alignment molding for the main wing. So you're not going to have any problem getting the wing pushed in exactly where it needs to be, and have it perfectly aligned with the fuselage. So I like the fact that they did that. Also, if you look at the wing, it doesn't just have foam hinges on the wing. It has actual plastic hinges on the wing. And the aileron servos were already pre-installed. As you can see here, I've got the CG molding. I went ahead and circled those with a black marker and put a dot right in the center of them so that when I'm trying to check the balance of the plane, I don't have to search for it out there in the bright sunlight. I'll be able to see those. Okay, and this is just another close-up of the main wing. You can see more clearly here where the CG molding is. All right, and here's the horizontal stabilizer and elevator assembly, and as you can see, they've got hinges on those as well. So I really like that. You know, for a really inexpensive plane like that, you typically don't see actual hinges on them. You can see right here where the holes in the molding are for the control horns. So the control horns actually bolt on. You're not going to have to worry about gluing the control horns for the elevator, the rudder, or the ailerons. So those are all bolt on. Here's a close-up of the not the vertical stabilizer, but this is the rudder assembly that has the tail wheel attached to it. As you can see, it's got the holes and the molding there for the control horn as well. I wanted to make you aware of these molded parts where you basically are going to have to glue in the hinges to attach the rudder assembly to the vertical stabilizer assembly on the back end of the fuselage. Now, there's a wide end and there's a narrow end on those hinges. So make sure that you dry fit everything together first before you do any gluing, because you don't want to glue those in backwards. But it will be obvious when you put those in. I think the thick end goes into the rudder assembly, but don't hold me to that. Dry fit them, you'll be able to see which direction they need to go in before you glue them in. All right, so these are the winglets, and there's molded channels on the main wing near the tip of each wing where these will slide right in. So those have got to be glued in. But everything is easy to align and assemble. There's no worries about that. Here is everything that comes in, all the parts, bits and pieces that come in the box. You've got a bag here with 2 screws for the spinner assembly. It comes with a 9x5 2-blade prop. It comes with a pack of spacers. I used one spacer on the back of the prop because it has one of those 5 millimeter shafts that fit over top of the 3 millimeter shaft on the motor, and you tighten it down with there's a washer and an M5 nut that will tighten those down, and then the two screws hold the spinner assembly together. Make sure that you balance your prop before you install it. You got a Y cable for your ailerons. You've got your linkages for your elevator and your rudder. I like the fact that they sheathed these in what looks like carbon fiber tube, and they did that to prevent these long control linkages from flexing. So I thought that was a brilliant idea. I'm gonna copy them on that in the future. Here are the two plastic hinges I was speaking of that attach the rudder assembly to the vertical stabilizer assembly. You get a fairly good manual with it. It's black and white. It's not a color manual, but it explains everything very well on the assembly. You get a pack here that has the control rods for the two ailerons. You get a 3M sponge pad for your flight controller or receiver or gyro. You also get a pad of Velcro to use for your battery and inside your battery bay. You get a pack here with all the screws and all the plates and control horns to put those together, and then another bag here that has the servo arms and screws. So and the screwdriver. That's everything that comes in, other than the main components of the plane. Here are the components that I am not going to install on the plane. Okay, these are the foam struts that you would glue to the steel struts. There were a couple of plastic risers on the inside of where the wheels are, and on mine I just snapped those off. I wasn't going to use those. I'm not going to use the spoiler here that goes on top of the fuselage right behind the canopy, and I'm definitely not going to be using the wheel skirts because I've already replaced the stock wheels with much larger ones. So those are components that come in the kit that I am not going to be using as part of the assembly. Here is a comparison between the stock wheel that came with it and the wheel that I put on it. Now, I will have links to all this stuff in the show notes. There will be links to these wheels. There will be links to the wheel collars. I did not want to use the little plastic keepers that they use to keep the stock wheels on because those have a habit of popping off. So I took actual 2.1 millimeter wheel collars that have grub screw on there to tighten down, so those wheels are not going to go anywhere. They're going to be staying on the axle. So I'll have links to the wheels. I'll have links to the spacers for the grub screws, with the grub screws that are 2.1 millimeter. I'll even have links to the glue I use, which is E6000 glue, which is really good glue for EPP and EPO foam. So look for that stuff in the show notes, guys. It will be in there. I also have a link to a battery that should work in that plane. And here is a close-up of, you can see how narrow that fuselage is. It's pretty long, but it's very narrow. So I just got that 3S 1500 milliamp hour LiPo sitting in there. I wanted to make sure that I could get everything in there. The ESC is in this compartment over here. I wanted to make sure I could get everything tucked in there and get the canopy on it without any problems. On this little raised foam area over here is where I'm going to mount my RadioLink Byme-A gyro, and then this cavity down here is where I'm going to install the receiver, and I'm going to punch a little angled hole into the side of the fuselage here to bring my antenna through so that my antenna is away from all the electronics. So I wanted to show you that. And here's what it looks like without the battery in it. And as I was saying before, the further back you go in this battery compartment, as you can see from the picture, the narrower it gets. So right here at the very back of the battery department, that's where I got that 27 millimeter number. Further forward, of course, it gets a little bit wider. So be aware of that. And here's where I've just dry fitted everything together. And make sure that before you use any glue, guys, make sure that you dry fit everything together first. so you know how it all goes together, so you can make sure that everything aligns properly and there's no oops moments when you glue something in. So, but that is a nice looking plane. I'm really looking forward to getting this plane in the air. I've already got it programmed into the radio, the range tests, fail safe. Everything has tested fine. The gyro modes have tested fine. So as soon as I get the weather, the last couple of days, we just got 4 to 5 inches of snow. So I'm just waiting for the snow to melt. One other thing, I wasn't able to use the decals. I'm going to be using wing tape to mark up the top of my wings and the top of my horizontal stabilizer so that it's very visible in the air. They rolled up, they have a full sheet of decals, but they rolled them up very tightly and then rubber banded them. And I have no idea how long that has been sitting in the box. The decals were not pre-applied. I tried straightening out that big sheet of decals, and all it did was wrinkle the decals as soon as I tried to straighten out the sheet. So I threw those away. All links to all this stuff will also be in our Amazon page for TinkerzLab. There's a lot of RC stuff in there as well as studio stuff. So if you guys haven't taken a look at that, every time that I'm looking for something that I need to purchase for this hobby, I add that stuff to my list. So it'll all be there in one spot. All right, so anyway, stay tuned for the maiden launch. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air.